This is a watch I've been curious about for over a year now, the Monta Atlas. In other videos, I've made clear my love of GMT watches, how they inspire me to think outside of myself and my bubble. GMTs remind me of travel and freedom, two things I could use a bit more of right now. And I'm also endlessly fascinated by the creativity of small brands like Monta that are forced to be innovative and don't have the burden of hundreds of years of tradition. So this Monta Atlas really intrigues me. First, the specs. The Monta Atlas is 38.5 millimeters in diameter, just over 10 millimeters thick, and 47 millimeters long. You're seeing this on my wrist, which is just over 7 inches around, or 18 centimeters. The Atlas is water resistant to 150 meters. On a bracelet, the Atlas sells for $1,840 US. It's about $200 cheaper on leather or rubber. The Atlas also comes with a dark gray dial or a silver dial. This right here, this is my favorite configuration. The blue dial on a bracelet. I have a lot of respect for Monta. They've been making watches for only a few years, and in that short time, they've built an impressive line and an impressive fan base. It helps that the founders of Monta have kind of been in the watch game for some time. The same guys who founded Everest Bands in St. Louis, Missouri, also founded Monta. That means that they understood the market already and had connections in Switzerland, where both Everest Bands and Monta watches are made. And another benefit is that many Everest Bands naturally fit Monta watches. But there's really no need to remove the Atlas bracelet. It looks good, and it has an outstanding micro-adjustment system, similar to the Rolex Glide Lock. Pull the bracelet away from the clasp and you'll be able to lock it in one of 3 positions. The attention to detail on the bracelet and all over the Atlas is impressive, especially considering the sub $2,000 price of the watch. And that's really what intrigues me about the Atlas, the surprising and tasteful attention to detail for the price. The case is quite elegant. The flanks are brushed with a polished bevel running along them. The tops of the lugs are brushed, and the inner edges of the lugs are beveled and polished. It's a nice touch that you don't see often. The top of the bezel has a sunray brushed finish, which I often prefer over polished bezels since brushed bezels are less likely to show fine scratches, which are my mortal lifelong enemies. Naturally, the centerpiece of the watch is what sits between the 2 sapphire crystals. The dial is dark blue, accented several places with touches of red on the dial, on the rehaut, and on the GMT hand, which is bent towards the end to clear the markers. It's another uncommon touch, which in this case reminds me of the vintage Seiko 6117 World Timer. The markers are very nicely done, with polished and angled surrounds and filled with BGW9 Luminova. The date window surround is similarly finished, which is to say finely done. And it sits at 6 o'clock. Yes, 6 o'clock. Thank you, Monta, for putting a date on a watch and maintaining vertical line symmetry. My only complaint about the dial, and the watch really, is that I don't think the logo matches the modern word mark or the modern design of the watch. I think the logo is a little too Baroque to match this watch. But I have no complaints about the hands. Hands are deceptively hard to design, and I think these are superb. What I like about them is that they're broad enough to be filled with lume and still have plenty of polished surface to reflect a lot of light, which not only makes them pretty, but easier to see in lower light. Below the surface is the Monta Caliber M23. It's a Sellita SW330 that's been regulated to plus or minus 5 seconds a day. It's nicely finished with Geneva stripes, perlage, snailing, and the Monta logo on the rotor. Unlike with the Rolex GMT, which has an independent local hour hand, the Atlas has an independent GMT hour hand. It's adjusted by pulling the crown out to the second position and turning the crown up towards 12. In the same position, you adjust the date by turning the crown in the opposite direction down. The third position hacks the movement and allows for setting of the local time. I go back and forth on which style of GMT movement I prefer. There are benefits to both. With 150 meters of water resistance and some elegance, I think the Atlas is quite versatile as is, but I think when you get to playing around with different strap options, you really see how the Atlas could be your only watch. I mean, if you wanted to live the sad, meaningless life of someone who doesn't collect watches. As an American and someone who loves to see tradition challenged, I feel a natural affinity with the Atlas and with Monta in general. To me, this is a brand that knows what it's doing and how to do it. They're producing a finely made, versatile Swiss watch at small scale and at a price which is within reach for many people. The Atlas excites me because of what it is and what it represents. This one lives up to the hype.